How many of you like being told what to do? Anyone? No one? Well, neither will I. And I really don't like limitations in general. Well, I used to not. But when I was presented with the option to write 10 things I knew in my theory of knowledge course, one of the first things I wrote was that I'm limited. And upon this, I took the time to think a lot about how limited I am. I'm a junior in the IB program. My name is Kevin Spears, and I am quickly approaching college. I will have to apply to schools, and I will have to begin to start making big decisions about my life and where I want to go. And as much as I'd like to be everything I can, and I can realize that there are limits to just about everything I do in life. But I beg the question of whether or not limitations are really as bad as they often portray. Whether or not they really hold us back as much as they think they do. And after some time, especially after theory of knowledge, I've come to think of them as the antithesis of what we think limitations are. They don't hold us back. I think they are tools to be used to propel us forward. But first, let's explain what a limitation is, or let's define it for the sake of this talk. I consider limitations to be boundaries or restrictions that we place upon goals, ideas, or processes. And working with that definition, I broke down my contemplation about whether or not limitations were such a bad thing into a couple sections. External limitations, internal limitations, and then experimentation. So first, I tackled what was most obvious to me was limitations that I couldn't control. What people told me I could not do, what the natural laws limited me to be capable of doing. And I thought, what can they do for me, rather than what can't they? And two things were glaringly obvious to me, which is first, they can protect me. And this can come in many shapes and forms. There's rules and laws. They can keep you from doing things that would hurt you or keep you from doing things that would put you in a worse position than you previously were. Such as, say, composing a piece of music. I'm a musician, and I like to compose. But one of the simple limitations I'm faced with is that there's a certain range of human hearing, and there's a certain range on instruments. And I have to work within that. And by keeping myself within that range, I'm keeping myself from producing stuff that wouldn't ever be heard, that wouldn't be valued. Or take, for example, laws, say a speed limit. Although many of us don't like to obey the speed limit, they do keep us safe. They keep us from harming other people or even harming ourselves. And then within those protections, we find ways to work around maybe what we think is keeping us back. And this is where I find that limitations can provide us alternate routes or methods of focusing ourselves. Say that I wanted to compose a piece of music, as I said earlier, and for an assignment, I was given that it had to be within a certain style. There are many styles of music and many uncreated styles of music that I could try and venture into. But by being told that I have to keep myself within a certain range of music, I've begun to focus myself and to create something that could maybe be understood by others, that could speak messages to other people. And limitations are keeping me able to do that. If I got rid of them, I would possibly tread onto paths that would lead me to dead ends, to places where I wouldn't want to go. But still, it leaves me with a wide range of places to go. The genres of music are still quite broad. So to focus myself, I create internal limitations, limitations that I have control over, that I create. And these limitations have both the properties of external limitations. They can protect and guide, but I also think they can fragment. And that's where it becomes very valuable for people, especially like me, who like to take on as many big projects as I can and do everything that I can. In my theory of knowledge course, again, I was told Parkinson's law, which was that a task fills the time that it's given. And I found this really true for me. I would constantly, if I didn't set my own limitations, would keep trying to make something new and better and expand the idea. Even when creating this talk, I created scripts upon scripts upon scripts of different ideas that I could choose. But I had to create a timeline for myself. I had to create my own limitations to keep myself accountable. I had to fragment this task of giving an entire TEDx talk into smaller elements. So I created a timeline, and first I gave myself a deadline of what I wanted to speak about. I had to create an outline. I eventually set the long limitations, but not after going through about 7 other ideas that my team members can tell you about. And then after that, I had to write the speech, memorize it, and at each step, I had to create smaller and smaller limitations for myself to keep myself moving forward, because otherwise I would get stuck in the details. Similarly, I started my extended essay this year, which is a research paper for IB students. And I had to limit myself on what I wanted to tackle, because I wanted to tackle machine learning, but this is a huge topic with concepts in both logic and math that go well beyond what my classes could provide me. And I wanted to chase all of them. So I created a limitation for myself, and I told myself it had to be one of the simpler algorithms. I couldn't chase neural networks or anything like that. I had to stay within something that was within my reach. I had to create those small little limitations. And I kept fragmenting my concepts into smaller bits, like what math I wanted to chase, what problem I wanted to go for, and it helped me put my energy towards something productive. Rather than going in circles, creating more and more topics, I had to settle and create something that I could be happy with at this very moment. And that's what these protections and these directions and this fragmentation did for me. It helped me take all of these possibilities that I put my energy into and limit them and keep them into something that's actually producible, that can be put into a sentence or a single paper. And it was very hard for me to do this because when dealing with limitations, we're very bad at knowing what our limitations are. Just, if any of you know the Dunning-Kruger effect, that's a prime example. Often, many people can't label themselves on what their level of expertise in a certain area is. Even the experts in the field, they often rate themselves way too low compared to where they should be. Or maybe, have any of you seen online where people claim that they can take on a lion or a polar bear one-on-one? And, well, I'm sorry to break it to them, but that's really not possible. So I was thinking, how can I know my limitations? What are my limitations? So I thought back to all my extracurriculars. I do quite a lot. I do music, I play instruments, I compose, I play sport, and I'm an IB. And I thought, what was the common theme that allowed me to move forward and to recognize these limitations that I had? And it was experimentation. It wasn't simply sitting there and thinking about what my limitations were. It was actually going out and living my life and figuring out what can I do right now and what can I not do. And part of that liberated me because often I like to sit there and think. But knowing that I had to go out and actually act and experiment and find something was a motivator to me. And it got me thinking again about how these experimentations could relate to these internal external limitations. And I found that these experimentations provide a basis of knowledge upon which you can work and then create those finer external and internal limitations. What you need to do is you need to walk on the edge of what you're capable of doing and break it down into even farther and finer details until you get to the finest detail you can and then rebuild up from there. What you do is you take what you know and take a sledgehammer to it and see if you can break it to its very limit and see what still stands. And once you know it still stands, you've found a limit. Say with an instrument, you take it hard etude and you see where your technique starts to fail. Maybe you can't get a shift, maybe you can't get a jump from one up to the other. With sports, maybe it's finding a very hard opponent and seeing where they take advantage of your limitations. And maybe it's with those more academically inclined with researching and what you want to know. You can do little experiments, or you can start researching and see where your estimated guesses start to break apart. And then you take those and you build off them. You don't say, well, I can't do this, so it all ends here. You take your experimentations, what you know, and you build off it. And that's where I think limitations can be viewed in two different ways. They can be viewed as a brick wall or something to build off. Either you can look at the limitation and say, well, that's where it ends. Or you can look at the limitation, break it down and say, where can I build off of it? And that's why, despite what many may think, I think limitations are a tool to be used. They're not as negative as we often portray them. They're a stepping stone. They're not some grand wall that keeps us from moving forward. By living our life and truly paying attention to what we're doing and breaking it down, we can begin to turn those huge walls into tiny stepping stones for us to take a step into what we want to do.